Hello, good evening to everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone warmly on behalf of myself, my colleague Rabbi Felicia Sol, who's here, and our community of B'nai Jeshurun. And we are happy to be joined by so many people who represent New York's diverse Jewish community. We have 700 people who signed up to be here in person and over 800 people who signed up to be present online, so we welcome those who are online as well. We want to say thank you to the planning committee, which included our community BJ, Congregation Beth Elohim in Brooklyn, New York Jewish Agenda, and the Marlene Meyerson JCC. And more than 20 co-sponsoring organizations. This forum is a reflection of what is possible when a wide and open tent comes together, spanning neighborhoods, denominations, ideologies, and generations, with a shared commitment to civic engagement, to Jewish life, and to the future of the city we love. As Jews, we are always in sacred and challenging conversation with one another and with the world around us. And we know that these times are not easy. Since October 7th and long before, many in our community have experienced pain and grief and fear and also fracture. The last 3 weeks have highlighted the threats to our community from many different sides, and the importance of us being together, even across differences of opinion. So, as we begin, we'd like to ask everyone to uphold the kind of community we want to be. Curious, open, respectful. We ask people to listen with compassion and to listen across differences and to uphold and respect the dignity of everyone. We are here because we believe deeply in democracy, and this is what democracy looks like. And being part of this city's civic life not to be taken for granted, never to be taken for granted. And I can tell you because I grew up in dictatorship, and we never had anything like this. And so this upholding the city's civic life is a sacred Jewish act. All the issues that we will try to cover tonight, public safety, immigration, criminal justice, education, anti-Semitism, democracy, we understand all these issues as Jews through the prism of our Jewish values. And so the issues we know are complex. We all want to see the city. We dream of the city we all want, but we have slightly different dreams. And so we don't all agree, and it's important that we hear carefully and respectfully, because this is what is going to make it possible to have a real conversation. So I want to also make clear that as a religious and nonprofit institution, we follow the law with great integrity. Neither our community, B'nai Jeshurun, nor any of the other co-organizers endorses candidates. All candidates who met our eligibility criteria of receiving matching were equally invited to participate. They were all invited to participate. Some are here, some are not. And so we are about to begin, and I would like to say welcome and thank you to our great moderators who know how to hold the complexities we are going to address tonight with balance and with care. Please join me in welcoming and thanking Amy Spitalnik, Executive Director of the Jewish Council for Public Affairs, and Errol Lewis, political anchor of Spectrum New York One, and host of Inside City Hall. Thank you both for your leadership and for guiding us in this essential conversation.
Thank you very much, Rabbi, and welcome to everyone who's here and those who are watching on the live stream. I'm very glad to be here and glad to have one more conversation with these candidates. I'm going to introduce them briefly, talk a little bit about the rules that we've agreed to by which we're going to conduct this conversation, and then Amy will ask the first question. On the stage, ladies and gentlemen, going from left to right, Brad Lander is the current city controller, the chief fiscal officer of the city. Prior to being elected controller, he spent 12 years in the city council, where he co-founded the council's Progressive Caucus. He previously served as director of the Fifth Avenue Committee and the Pratt Center for Community Development. Next to him is Zoran Mamdani, an assemblyman from Queens. His district includes all or part of Astoria, Ditmar, Steinway, and Astoria Heights. He is the first South Asian man elected to the state assembly, the third Muslim to serve in the body, and prior to his election, he was a foreclosure prevention specialist. Scott Stringer served as New York City Controller from 2014 to 2021. He was Manhattan Borough President from 2006 to 2013, and a member of the Assembly representing the Upper West Side and Hell's Kitchen from 1993 to 2005. Next to him is Whitney Tilson, an author and the lead analyst for Stansberry Investment Advisory, a Wall Street newsletter. Mr. Tilson is a co-founder of Teach for America and is active in the growth and development of charter schools. And Jim Walden is an attorney in private practice who served as an assistant U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of New York from 1993 to 2002. He has been involved in several prominent cases involving matters of white-collar crime, antitrust law, and government reform. So welcome, candidates. I'm glad that you are all here. Two other candidates will be joining us. They have for complicated reasons not worth going into. I will mention that we're going to be joined by Adrian Adams, the Speaker of the City Council, and Zelnor Myrie, who is a state senator from Brooklyn. Let me, the ground rules that the candidates have agreed to are as follows. Candidates will generally have about a minute to respond to the questions that Amy and I will pose. Those with objections or rebuttals should give a hand signal, and when recognized, will generally be given about 30 seconds. I say generally because these guidelines are intended to foster discussion and generate an exchange of ideas rather than a rattling off of talking points. For the same reason, and to make the best use of our limited time, we occasionally may not ask the exact same question to every candidate, since these are candidates with different perspectives and experiences that are worth exploring. We expect candidates and audience members to respect one another and uphold the kind of community that we want to be, curious, courageous, and respectful, and we'll ask everyone to refrain from calling out, interrupting, or expressing disagreement through disruptive behavior. And to maintain a respectful and constructive atmosphere, no signs, flags, or other symbols are permitted. So those are the ground rules, and I'm going to turn it over now to Amy.
Thank you so much, Errol, and thank you again to the candidates for being here. Look, we're going to start this conversation recognizing that we're really at a challenging and vulnerable moment to be a Jew in New York City, to be a Jew in America, to be a Jew in the world right now. We're coming at this conversation, we're coming at this mayoral race at a time of rising anti-Semitism. A decade ago, I remember a swastika being carved on my local playground in Brooklyn, and it was horrifying and shocking at the time. And a decade later, it feels like that's the new normal. And of course, those rising hate crimes targeting visibly Jewish Jews on the streets of Brooklyn and around the city, mass acts of violence like the shooting in Pittsburgh, the deadliest day for the Jewish people since in U.S. history, were only compounded on October 7th, which was the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and even more so led to skyrocketing hate and extremism here at home in ways that this conversation can certainly address. It really feels like it's coming from all directions if you are a Jew in America right now. And that's true both in terms of direct anti-Semitism, and it's also true in terms of the broader extremism and polarization that we know all so well. And all of this matters because Jews, like any other community, deserve to live safely and freely. And it matters because attacks on Jews are a threat not just to Jews, which in and of itself should be enough, but threaten all communities and the fundamental norms of our society and our democracy. And so too does the Jewish community know that our safety is tied not just to particularist ideas of what's a, quote, Jewish issue, but to the broader work of justice in building an inclusive city and inclusive democracy. And so threats to any community's rights, dignity, safety, make Jews and all of us less safe, just as attacks on Jews make each and every community less safe, because the Jewish community is incredibly diverse. You can see that looking around this room. You can see that looking around the city. Because our Jewish values demand us to care about these values of inclusivity, justice, and democracy, and because Jewish safety and advancement here in New York, my own family's, and I imagine each and every other person in this room, has been tied inextricably to a strong New York City that ensures opportunity and justice for everyone. So I wanted to name that at the top, because when we think about Jewish issues, we sometimes think about very specific issues, and we're absolutely going to start and discuss those issues. But we're also going to talk about a variety of issues that might not necessarily be publicly understood as Jewish issues, but they absolutely are. But we are going to start right now talking about this rise of anti-Semitism and threats to Jewish safety. As I mentioned, it really feels like it's coming from a variety of directions across the ideological spectrum, leading to real violence targeting Jews here and around the country. So we're going to start, how do you plan to tackle rising anti-Semitism in all of its forms in a way that not only addresses it head on, but brings New York's Jews and other communities together instead of further dividing us and politicizing anti-Semitism? We'll start with Comptroller Lander and go down their own. We have, I believe, 1 minute, and Jacob right in the front row will be holding up a sign to make sure you all know how much time you got.
First of all, can we say thanks to the organizers of this event, to New York Jewish Agenda, to Rolly and BJ, to Amy and Errol. It really is an honor to be with you. And Amy, thank you for those opening remarks. At the same time that this is an agonizing time, and after what happened in Boulder and in DC, I mean, I'm at Jewish communal events all the time, and you just can't be looking over your shoulder all the time. I do want to underline, for me, this place, these institutions, these values are where the whole reason that I wanted to be in government, to work on affordable housing, to work on Tikkun Olam, to see everyone as B'Tselem Elohim. So I am grateful to be here and fight with you for a future grounded in those values and the beautiful future of Jewish New York City. I've got a comprehensive plan on anti-Semitism that is, one, make sure that there's a visible presence. That's the Hate Crimes Task Force. You can get a car out front if you want one. Focus online, because there's a lot we can do to prevent rising extremism through a great program the Citizens Crime Commission has. And third, get into our schools and communities and let our kids and our young people become educators. There's a great program that Chinese American children and families run against anti-Asian hate. We should be using that to educate about Jewish history and values and tradition and anti-Semitism, and make sure we can do that deep education that starts to change the norms and keep all our communities safe.
Assemblymember Mondani.
Thank you so much for this question. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Rabbi Matalan, for having me. It's lovely to be back at BJ some months after we had a Democratic Club forum here. After the horrific war crime of October 7th, a friend of mine told me how he went to Shabbat services and he was sitting when he heard the door open, and before he could even turn, he felt a chill go up his spine. And he told me that this fear was one that he continued to feel even after he left his synagogue. The sense that you could not know what was coming for you, even in the place that you had previously felt safest. And I spoke to a Jewish man in Williamsburg just a few weeks ago at a meeting, and he told me that the same door he had left unlocked for years, he now locks every single night. Anti-Semitism is something that is not only categorized in the statistics that we see every single year, it's also something that is experienced and felt and feared so often by so many Jewish New Yorkers. That's why at the heart of my Department of Community Safety is a focus on hate crimes, and specifically a commitment, the single largest fiscal commitment in this race, to increase funding for anti-hate crime prevention programming by 800%, to make it clear that anti-Semitism has no place in this city, and that we will use every single tool at our city government's disposal to not just talk about it, but also to tackle it and ensure that it does not rear its head here again.
Mr. Stringer.
Like many of you, I was totally shocked the day of October 7th, and how it played out for all of us, and the tremendous loss of life. And then just in the last few weeks, to see the Jewish Museum in Washington, that young couple, Jew and Gentile, just gunned down because of Jewish hate. And then we saw Jews in America, in Boulder, being set on fire. My own wife is at the Jewish Heritage Museum, a living memorial to the Holocaust. Do you know what I think about every day she goes to work? I need to hear when she comes home. So, to me, never again means never, never again. This has to stop. And it has to stop the anti-Semitism and violence against the Jewish people. But we also have to continue the tradition of New York, and this is where a strong mayor comes in. I have stood with the Muslim community after 9/11 when there were attacks on the community. I have stood with Asian Americans who were also attacked. You see, when we've had an issue in the Jewish community, my time in elective office, I called black clergy and said, we need you tonight because a SWAT sticker is on the synagogue. We can bring the city together, and we can establish the ground rules for never again. And that's what I'm going to do when I'm mayor of New York City.
Mr. Tilson.
This issue is very personal to me. My wife and 3 daughters are Jewish. We've been members of Central Synagogue for 25 years, and I've been horrified by the explosion of anti-Semitism. It makes all of us feel unsafe. I think a big chunk of Jews feeling unsafe is the mobs that have been incited on our college campuses and in our streets. There is someone on this stage with me who has been a primary inciter of these mobs over his entire life, who won't visit Israel, who refuses to acknowledge Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state, who has accused Israel of genocide, who is a leader of the movement to divest from Israel, and I think that needs to be made clear.
We're going to go to Mr. Walden, and we're going to go to Mr. Walden, and then we're going to give Assemblymember Mamdani, if he would like it, 30 seconds to respond.
Yeah, so I'm going to use 1 second of my time to just honor my Democratic colleagues, because we have all seen the food fight that sometimes happens during these things. Running for office is hard. I think everyone is trying their best and has a lot of really important policies, and I just want to say it's been an honor to sit here with them. With respect to your question, which is what I'm going to do about anti-Semitism enforcement, people have to understand that if you look at the data, because that's what I do, is I look at the problem. It's not just a problem of anti-Semitism. It's a problem with anti-Muslim hate, anti-trans hate, and anti-black hate. From 2018 to 2023, hate crimes against all of those groups was up. The way to deal with that, and I've got an anti-Semitism plan on my website. It's in writing. You can read it. It's very comprehensive, and it deals with a lot of different issues. But the hate crime policy in my administration is going to be the same for everyone, which is we're going to have a city-based prosecution system that makes examples of people that engage in hate crime, particularly against most at-risk communities, including the Jewish community. They are going to serve jail time. We are going to make it a priority, and that is how we're going to deter more hate crime in this city.
So, we've been joined by Senator Meyerson, and I'm going to give Assemblymember Mamdani, if you would like it, 30 seconds to respond, and then we'll come to you, Senator, for quick minute thoughts on how you are going to be confronting the crisis of anti-Semitism.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to respond. I think of the words of Noy Katzman, who lost his brother on October 7th, who said, "We must never give up on the conviction that all life, Israeli and Palestinian, Jewish and Arab, is equally precious. We must never lose hope of a brighter, peaceful future." The language that I have used, that Mr. Tilson is critiquing me for, is language that has also been echoed by Israeli historians on that very topic. Historians like Amos Goldberg and Daniel Blattman. The language that I have used has been echoed by the former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Olmert, who recently said just a few weeks ago, "What we are doing in Gaza is a war of devastation, limitless, indiscriminate, cruel, and criminal killing of civilians." And I provide these citations because I can accept disagreement, absolutely. What has troubled me, however, is in Mr. Tilson's remarks about me, that disagreement has sometimes broached into a new area, one where the language is less of humanity, more of someone is at the gates, almost painting me as if I am an animal. And that is a place that I think we then leave this same area of shared humanity that allows for disagreement but understands the place of each and every one of us in this same city, fighting for the same thing, a city of dignity for each and every person.
Thank you. Senator Meyerson, sorry. Okay. 30 seconds.
Sure. When Vicky Palladino posted that noxious tweet about you, Zoran, calling for you to be deported, I publicly said that was abhorrent, and I do not think my critiques of you have crossed any lines. I will point out that the human suffering that we both care about, my heart goes out to the suffering in Gaza. What the problem that I have is that I have never heard Zoran decry the human suffering in Ukraine, where I've visited 4 times and seen it personally, in Darfur, etc. He has a sole obsession on the sole Jewish state in this world.
Okay. One word, and then we're going to go to Senator Meyerson and move on.
Yeah. I hope there isn't another response, because then it can just become a two-person debate.
No, we are moving on.
These are the words spoken of someone who has not actually looked through my record. You know, I am someone whose politics comes from a belief in the universal values of human rights, of justice, of dignity, and safety. When I, as an assembly member, had the opportunity to question Basil Sagos, who was the former commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation, I praised him for having visited Ukraine and serving as an auxiliary ambulance member. I praised him for being able to call those war crimes what they were. And I also say this as someone who is the first Indian American elected official to run for mayor in the history of this city. I have also been very critical of the Indian government in betraying its constitutional commitment to a secular republic with dignity for all. And I've been critical because ultimately what binds all of these examples is the violation of a universal principle. That is what drives me.
Thank you. We're going to move on. Senator Meyerson, 1-minute response to how are you going to tackle rising anti-Semitism in a way that doesn't just confront it, but also seeks to bring New Yorkers together instead of further dividing us?
Good evening, everyone. Walked into a lively conversation. No, thank you for your patience, and thank you for having me. Look, I'm someone that was born and raised in New York City. I grew up in Crown Heights, literally born in a safety net hospital in Crown Heights. And so my relationship with my Jewish friends and neighbors has been something very personal for me. And I, of course, have the honor of representing a very diverse Jewish community currently in the state Senate. So I think we have to be unequivocal in calling out the very clear rise in anti-Semitism. And as mayor, one of my #1 jobs is to keep people safe. And to ensure that everyone in this city feels safe, and that includes every single Jewish New Yorker. So I want to fully fund the Office to Prevent Hate Crime in this city. It has not been fully funded. I want to ensure that I have someone in my administration advising me on anti-Semitism, and I also want to fully have personnel in the Office of Commission of Human Rights, particularly in a federal administration that has weaponized anti-Semitism to divide and not bring us together. I want to ensure that New York is a leader in bringing us together.
Thank you. We're going to go with a quick follow-up. This is a yes or no question, and just please answer yes or no. So we're going to start with Mr. Walden. The current mayor has created a Jewish Advisory Council. Do you plan to do the same?
Yes.
Yes.
A real one.
Yes.
Yes, but far more representative than the current one.
Yes.
Okay. And one more follow-up, and we'll start maybe down with Senator Meyerson. Name one person you'll ask to join it.
So I currently represent CBE in the state Senate, so I'd ask Rabbi Timoner to be on it.
Ooh, I know a lot of our hearts are with Ruth Messenger right now, and we're praying for her, and she will certainly be a member of the Jewish Advisory Council of Administration.
It was an honor to attend Shabbat services at CBST, and I would love to ask Rabbi Jason Klein to be a part of that.
Assuming it passes the Conflict of Interest Board, I do think we have to start getting a lot of the next generation of Jewish leadership involved in a very real way to speak to so many of our issues, and I would ask my wife, Elise Bucksbaum, if she would do it.
My rabbi, Angela Buckdahl of Central Synagogue.
Someone that none of you have heard of, Sarah Silver, who is the young Jewish woman who saved my life literally when I was, I mean, that's metaphorical, but when I was struggling earlier in my life. I'd ask her. She's a great New Yorker.
Thank you all. So, related topic, some of which has already been woven into our conversation a bit. Certainly recent protests related to Israel and Palestine are sparking intense debate across the country, certainly across the city, and particularly given on some of the college campuses here, related to questions of community safety, of freedom of speech, of police response. Given the various contentious protests we've seen in the city over the last year and a half, how would you have handled the city's response differently as mayor? How are you making decisions around policing related to these protests, and what principles will guide you? Perhaps we'll start with Mr. Stringer, and then we'll move down to the left and around. I'm trying to figure out how we can do this in a way that doesn't just always start with one of the two of you.
Hard to answer in a minute, but I'll start to make some main points. First, I am somebody in my life who has practiced civil disobedience, arrested numerous times on issues related to apartheid in South Africa and Mandela in front of ExxonMobil. And when I committed that civil disobedience, I fully expected to get arrested. I believe in protest. I believe in peaceful protest, but I also believe that you don't block bridges, you don't block ambulances, and if you do that, you will face arrest in a Stringer administration. I also think that the hate speech of some of these protests relating to Jews in Israel have been very, very unfortunate and anti-Semitic. I really have trouble when people are running down a street in mass, screaming from the river to the sea. Now, half these people don't even know which river, which sea. They think it's the Hudson and the East River. But there are other people, well, it's true, but there are other people who cross the line to Jewish hate. Now, I do believe in free speech, but I also believe in education. And I also believe that we have to speak up as a community when hate reels its ugly head, even if it's in the form of protest.
Assemblymember Mandani. Yes.
In the UJA's questionnaire, there was a question that was posed around the consideration of incorporating curricula on the vibrancy, the beauty, the breadth of Jewish life at every single stage of our public education system. And I loved that as a suggestion. It would be part of what I would do as the next mayor. Because I think to what Scott is saying, there is also a necessity to understand that every generation of students has to be taught. And I was lucky as someone who grew up in Morningside Heights and went to Bronx Science that I had a Holocaust museum at the very school that I attended. I didn't have to go so far to learn more about that. And to the question around how would my approach be different from that of Eric Adams? You know, for a long time, Mayor Adams had said that he was begged by Columbia to send NYPD officers onto that campus. And then later at a town hall on the Upper West Side, he revealed that actually he had begged them. And I think that safety has to be paramount here. And his decision to do so led to the hospitalization of a number of students and also a police officer to discharge their weapon. I would not send police officers for the violations of college codes. I think the police's focus should be on the violation of the city's criminal code.
Comptroller Lander.
Look, it is important to try to get the balance right here because, of course, it is absolutely critical to protect free speech, and we have a president right now who has had people deported for writing op-eds and participating in nonviolent protests. So it is a New York tradition and a value to protect free speech, and as mayor, I will. You don't have the right, however, to harass people, to threaten people, to get in the faces of individuals, and so you're protecting the safety of individuals, not from things that we'll hate hearing, but from threats of violence or menacing, and that I will absolutely also do. And then I do agree it is critical for the mayor, in the way that Scott said, to stand up and say why something is vile. So it is a free speech right now to say globalize the Intifada. But I don't know about you, all I can hear right now is what happened in DC or what happened in Boulder. It feels to me like you're saying it's open season on Jews wherever they are, and that doesn't mean you don't have a free speech right to do it, but I want you to understand, as the Jewish mayor of the city of New York, how Jews hear what you're saying and why it sounds like a threat to our safety and why you shouldn't say it.
Senator Meyerson.
Look, the job of the mayor is to keep New Yorkers safe, and that includes New York students who may feel threatened by particular types of speech or particular circumstances. I think it's really important that the mayor have the ability to bring down the temperature. We can disagree, and we can disagree passionately. In fact, I think it's in our New York City DNA to disagree. It's okay. But my job is to go in and say, listen, let's have this exchange and do it in a way where there is not violence, where there isn't a communication that someone might feel their own personal liberty at stake. So I would have done that differently. I wouldn't have sent NYPD in first. I would have went in first. I would have had conversations and had people be able to do that. But if people break the law, they should be held accountable. I think all of us understand that. That is not a radical proposition. What is needed in this moment is leadership that says we are going to stand up for people's safety and do so in a way that allows for our Constitution to remain and for people to continue to feel safe.
Mr. Walden.
So again, you can look at my website on this because this is laid out, but I fundamentally believe that what was happening on Columbia's campus went way beyond hate speech and went into hate activity. There were Jewish kids that were essentially pinned against buildings. I knew plenty of people that were there that watched it. The protesters were literally saying, we're not touching you, but literally stopping their egress. To me, that crosses the line from speech to conduct. From my perspective, having the flag of a terrorist organization that has been designated by our federal government as a terrorist organization, as part of that, just puts gasoline on the fire. So when I'm mayor, I plan to do things differently. I plan to hold colleges appropriately accountable for making sure that there aren't paid organized protesters on their campus, which should just be for students. I'm going to make sure that people that apply for these permits are vetted to make sure that foreign money is not going into the protest, and I'm going to go to court if I have to make sure that terrorist symbols are not displayed during the course of any protest, whether it's a protest in support of one group or another. We need safety, we need balance, I agree with that, but the balance is not just allowing the essentially terrorist perspectives to, terrorist perspectives to ratchet up the temperature so that people get hurt.
Mr. Tilton.
I strongly believe in the right to free speech and to protest, and if protesters want to wave some Palestinian flags or hold up signs saying globalize the Intifada from the river to the sea, I actually don't think they should be punished or arrested for that. It's when it crosses the line into behavior that I would act strongly. I believe that when campus police are overwhelmed by mobs invading buildings and threatening Jewish students, setting up encampments, yes, we should bring the NYPD in to clear that out. I think we should reinstitute the law that existed for decades prior to COVID that did not allow people to do these things anonymously by wearing masks, dating back to this is dating back to white supremacists wearing hoods. You got to be accountable for your actions and make sure you stay on the right side of the law and peaceful protest. I agree with Jim entirely that this movement is not just organic, that it's being funded by Hamas and Qatar, much of it, and we should be investigating that. And lastly, I'm fine if you want to protest in Washington Square Park, for example. When these protests, when protesters are allowed to go march into Crown Heights, for example, you're throwing a match into a powder keg, and that should not be allowed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, candidates. We're going to move on to a new topic, and we'll start with you, Mr. Weldon. By custom and by law, New York has long been a sanctuary city with statutes that limit and prohibit New York City agencies from aiding or engaging with federal civil immigration enforcement. HIAS is the world's oldest refugee protection organization and one of our partners in sponsoring today's event. For more than a century, Jewish community organizations here in the city have provided shelter, food, translation services, and other help to Jews fleeing persecution. So here's the question. As mayor, how would you enforce New York City's sanctuary city laws, and how would you protect the rights of immigrants from federal reach? How would you direct the NYPD and other city agencies to align with your views?
So all these questions are very hard to answer in a minute, but I'll try my best. Number one, what is happening with ICE across the country is just wrong, and it's illegal. They're using administrative warrants, which they're allowed to do with strict limits, and they are completely breaking the legal limits of what they're supposed to do. So number one, I would put together a task force of lawyers to bring this case to court now, not next week, not a month from now, to get an injunction against ICE doing that in New York City. Thank you. Number two, there is one change to the sanctuary city laws that needs to be in place. When that woman, Tabrina Kawam, was immolated on the subway by a migrant, ICE could not put a detainer on the individual responsible for it. The person that was on videotape burning her alive, ICE was not allowed to put a detainer to make sure that if he got out under New York City's laws and rules, that he would be kept in jail. So that aspect of the sanctuary city law needs to be changed, because we have to be able to put detainers and have ICE put detainers on violent criminals. That said, I'll tell you one thing for sure. We are 6,000 cops down in New York City. We are feeling unsafe. I would not have NYPD helping ICE arrest New Yorkers. Okay. That would stop.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tilson.
I want to say I abhor the way Trump and his goons have demonized immigrants and terrorized our immigrant communities. And in case you think it's impossible for me to say anything nice about Zohran, I actually think immigrants like Zohran and his family, I wish we had a million more of them in New York and in our country. Immigrants are the backbone of this city. So the only area that I just want to echo what Jim said is that we Democrats lose the narrative when we go too far and make it impossible for local and state law enforcement to communicate with federal law enforcement. And in fact, after the City Council passed Sanctuary City Law number 2 and number 3, the number of computerized pings, you would call it, requests for people on the terrorist watch list, people wanted for serious crimes elsewhere, between the federal authorities and the NYPD, and this was pre-Trump, went down by 96%. And that makes us all less safe and is crushing us politically. So we got to be smart about this as Democrats.
Look, I don't think it's any secret that Donald Trump and Trump 2 is hell-bent on destroying the New York City safety net and taking as many innocent people down this path. And it's going to take a mayor who has real experience, understanding the budget, because that is where they're going, taking money, $80 million one time, looking at our other federal funding that's already been appropriated. I will set aside a $1 billion very, very rainy day fund to make sure that we can replenish our vital social services, especially our immigrant rights, our lawyers, to make sure that we do not collapse the safety net before the congressional midterm elections. We also have to be strategic about how we begin to reactivate the labor and business communities, to work with our Washington partners, both in the Congress and in the Senate, to start to be much more proactive and loud about how we dismantle what is happening to us. Look, I will promise you as mayor that I am not going to let Donald Trump, that schmuck, get into our business. And I am promising you he is not going to cross the line in New York City.
Assemblyman.
If you didn't see the commercial, I can't afford any more money, so I hope you saw it.
Yeah, we saw it. It's a technical term you referred to there. Yes.
It's a good commercial. You know, at the heart of Mayor Adams' argument to New Yorkers about his relationship to President Trump is that by collaborating with Washington, D.C., he is saving New York City from the worst of what would be possible. But in the midst of that collaboration, we are still seeing $80 million taken out of a city bank account. We are still seeing New Yorkers being picked up by men who are masked in unmarked cars, whether they are on the street at their routine check-in or even just in their own apartment building. And what this is an assault on the very fabric of our city. It's one that plays out in the names, such as Dylan, a public high school student who is currently hundreds of miles away from his mother and his siblings, but also in the neighborhoods that it is hollowing out. There are parts of immigrant New York City where you can hear from small business owners how they just have far fewer customers than before because no one feels safe leaving their home. As the first immigrant mayor of this city in generations, I will be proud to stand up for immigrants across our city, and I will be prouder still to start to fund legal representation for immigrants who are in deportation proceedings, because what we've seen is that has an 11-fold increase in the likelihood of them coming home to their family, and we need to use every tool at our disposal to ensure that every family is kept together in this city.
It's a deep Jewish value to welcome the stranger because we were strangers in Egypt, and what New York City has been for us is extraordinary, and I feel this so personally, and that's why I feel deeply proud of what the Jewish community has done through Hayas for over a century, but right now to reach out and provide support. That's why I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of those sanctuary city laws, and last Thursday I joined Immigration Arc at 290 Broadway to observe immigration hearings, and then when a couple of families were stripped of their asylum cases, to walk them out of the building. A father and a 2-year-old son, a couple who had their cases severed, like we witnessed a family separation, and 2 parents with school kids who thought they were never going to see them again. And thankfully, we were able to get out of the building and get them back. But that's when it occurred to me, how come the school social worker or the parent coordinator in their kid's school hasn't already connected them to one of the great pro bono legal service organizations or to one of the city-funded organizations? There is so much more that the mayor and New York City could be doing through our schools, through our shelters, through our public hospitals, to make sure that all those folks get connected to the resources that they need before they wind up in that interaction with ICE or our immigration court.
Donald Trump, for his entire career, has benefited off of chaos and confusion. And our sanctuary city laws are no different. Well-known progressive Rudy Giuliani was a big defender of our sanctuary city laws because he understood what this community meant to New York City. It is effectively a codification of a principle in the 10th Amendment that says we are not required to carry out the federal policies. So as the next mayor of this city, I'm gonna go on the offensive. I'm gonna hire 50 more lawyers for our law department, and I'm gonna utilize that 10th Amendment to ensure that we have the backs of our immigrant community. I am the son of 2 immigrants, undocumented when they had me, took me to city hospitals, went to my PTA meetings without the fear of deportation because they knew the city would have their back. That is what I plan to do as the next mayor. But people also come here for opportunity. So I want to do something called Work NYC that gives people a New York City specific work permit so that they can do what everyone comes to the city to do and what they stay to do, and that is work.
Okay. We have been joined by Adrienne Adams. I gave you a little bit of her biography a little bit earlier, the Speaker of the City Council. And Ms. Adams, the question is, as mayor, how would you enforce New York City's sanctuary city laws, and how would you protect the rights of immigrants from federal reach? How, in particular, would you direct the NYPD and other city agencies to align with your views on this?
Thank you very much for the question, Errol. Apologies for my tardiness. I'm an outer borough girl, so it takes me a minute, and it's raining now. You know, as speaker, I've been doing the work already for those that have been watching. People have actually targeted me for protecting our sanctuary city and have looked for the city council to amend our sanctuary city laws, which I have refused to do every single time. And right now, we know that no matter who the next mayor of New York City is, that there will continue to be a target on the back of New Yorkers. Now, the most impressive attorney general in the world, Tish James, has endorsed me, and she gave me the best advice ever. She said, Adrian, if Donald Trump comes after New York, sue him. So, thank you, Tish. So that is what I am doing right now. When Eric Adams gave an illegal executive order about a month or so ago, what I did as city council speaker was I took him to court to prevent Donald Trump's ICE from ever coming back onto Rikers Island and New York City. I will protect our immigrants through everything, and we will make sure that New York remains that sanctuary city and role model for the nation.
Thank you so much. So we've been talking about some heavy topics. We're going to lighten it up with a very quick lightning round. And we're going to we'll start on this side for the first question, maybe with Speaker Adams on the second question. But number one, what's your go-to Jewish deli, bakery, or restaurant? High stakes.
I am so embarrassed to say that I don't have one. Isn't that terrible? I'm sorry.
Well, it's such a cliche, but Katz's.
Katz's.
Pastrami on rye at Katz's.
Yes.
Miriam for brunch, Russ and Daughters for bagels.
So I have a bunch in Crown Heights, and I don't want to get in trouble with my constituencies, but I'd say on Kingston, and I'm getting a lox and cream cheese on a plain bagel.
I gotta go with Katz's. Oh my gosh, hot pastrami on rye all the time.
So everyone's hungry now. We're going to start with Speaker Adams in this next one. Which Jewish holiday has the best vibes?
Hanukkah. Dreidels.
I'm definitely going Purim. That's the most fun for me.
I like having people over for Sukkot.
I have to go with Hanukkah because when I grew up in New York City, I moved here when I was 7 years old. I spent Hanukkah with a close friend of mine, and I just remember it being a night where we watched 8 Crazy Nights by Adam Sandler, and that has forever stayed in my mind.
Especially with the kids growing up, Purim, the dreidel, it's a whole thing.
I'm going to expand your question from holiday to celebration and say the bar and bat mitzvahs in our family. My niece just became bat mitzvah at Congregation Beth Elohim in Brooklyn, and it brings the whole family together from around the world, literally, and it's a great celebration.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it counts, but I have to go with bar and bat mitzvahs too, which was some of them are so crazy they were more expensive than my wedding. I'm sure.
In New York City, especially. We're gonna come back to perhaps some less light topics, but appreciate that. So, we've already started to talk about the ways in which Israel and Gaza is showing up as a local issue here, and that's what we want to stay focused on. We don't want to get into a debate on foreign policy. But given the prominence of New York's Jewish community, given the ways in which this really is the center of the world, as I think all of us would agree, and so much of international affairs plays out here, what do you see both the formal and informal role of the New York City mayor in engaging in the U.S.-Israel relationship and in the broader conflict? I will say, when I worked at City Hall, I took Mayor Bill de Blasio to Israel a decade ago. This has become a staple of so much of what mayors have done, and each has approached it differently. So we'd like to hear from you how you would approach that relationship, whether you would support efforts like boycotts, divestments, and sanctions, and anything else that you would like to share about specifically what's in your purview as mayor. And we will start with Speaker Adams.
Well, the first thing that I am going to do is prioritize my trip to the Holy Land. That is what I call Israel. And I've been waiting to go. I could not visit when the delegation went because it was my first budget, and I had to make sure that over 8 million people were prioritized in that. And so my priority, my first international trip, of course, will be to the Holy Land. I can't wait to see the River Jordan, quite frankly. But I think that we need to look at, in New York City, as mayor, I will be prioritizing some things that have been kind of slacking in this administration, and that is we have to make sure that we are fully funding the Office of Hate Crime Prevention. New York is leading in anti-Semitism across the nation and growing every single day. I have stressed to this mayor that we need to prioritize and fund as well the Commission on Human Rights. This is a commission that has a headcount of 136 individuals and are down 20%. I've also asked for an additional $6 billion to be brought into the Commission on Hate Crimes. I believe that before we can do anything else, we have to put our money where our mouth is when it comes to preventing hate crimes and when it comes to preventing anti-Semitism in New York City.
Senator.
One of the things that I've had the honor of participating in, and one of the moderators has as well, is something we do in Crown Heights called One Crown Heights, where we have members of all different types of folks in the community come together to talk about really difficult issues and some light issues around the Jewish community and its relation to the rest of New Yorkers. I'd like to replicate that model and do that throughout the city in different neighborhoods. I also want to extend the education on Jewish history to have it in all grades and not restricted to some of the older grades that we have now. I have not yet been to Israel. I do want to go as mayor, and I do not support BDS.
So most Sundays at this time, I go to Union Square, and I join a group called Israelis for Peace that has, for a year and a half, been calling for the return of the hostages, for a ceasefire and end of the war, for the resumption of aid to prevent starvation in Gaza, and we hold up pictures of hostages and their families, and we hold up pictures of kids in Gaza, and try to remember that they are all created B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. Early in this cycle, Jewish Insider published these letters I wrote in 1990 when I was a junior in college, and I was then, and I remain now, someone who is deeply inspired by and believes in the vision of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state, as envisioned in that Declaration of Independence, open to the ingathering of exiles, but also with full social and political rights for all its inhabitants, regardless of religion. For that to be true, the occupation of West Bank and Gaza has to end so Israel can be a Jewish and democratic state. And no mayor is going to make that happen, obviously, but trying to set a tone where you can have that vision of Israel. So I have visited three times before. I will go for my fourth. Each time when I went, I also went to a refugee camp in the West Bank, reached out to Palestinian human rights activists as well. I'll do that again as mayor and try to open up more space for a dialogue here that grows room for all those points of view.
I envision my role first and foremost as the mayor of this city focused on the concerns of New Yorkers. And when Jewish New Yorkers were recently polled about the top concerns in this city, the first concern was affordability. And to the question of how I see my role in the context of foreign policy of Israel and Palestine, the first thing I would do is to deliver us a more affordable city in what is currently the most expensive city in the United States. I am someone for whom at the core of my politics is a belief in nonviolence. And having seen the efficacy of nonviolent movements in creating compliance with international law, specifically with South Africa, that is what brought me to support BDS. And what I've said is that one need not visit Israel to stand up for Jewish New Yorkers. I believe that to stand up for Jewish New Yorkers means that you actually meet Jewish New Yorkers wherever they may be it at their synagogues and temples, or at their homes, or on the subway platform, at a park, wherever it may be. But I also do want to say that just by my having been a supporter of this nonviolent movement for compliance with international law, I'm not even sure if I would be allowed to enter into Israel, because I think that there is legislation that prohibits the entry of anyone who supports that legislation. So it is both a question for me, but also, were the answer to be different, I think the result would be the same.
I am, in my heart, a Zionist. I believe that Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish state. I do believe BDS is not just anti-Israel, but anti-Semitic. Those of you who know me know I don't play both sides. I tell you my opinion. I am comfortable with who I am. As mayor, I will make sure that, as the Jewish mayor, that I represent everybody. I've been in the mosque. I've been in churches. Obviously been in shuls. And the job of mayor is to protect everybody. Right now, the Jewish community is facing tremendous, tremendous pressure. And it's time to turn our attention to keeping Jews safe. I hated when I had my little kids and they were at Rodef Shalom pre-K. I hated the security that was necessary to protect them. I understood it, but I hated it. And I would hate it for anybody. I studied the civil rights movement. I organized the rally against the KKK. I hated those people too. They have no business in our city. But we have to have a mayor who's going to absolutely protect the citizens and not mince words, and I will do that as your mayor.
It probably wouldn't be in my first week, but in the first year, I would make my 4th visit to Israel and my 5th visit to Ukraine to show solidarity with 2 of our greatest allies who are in the front lines of the war on terror. I want to echo what Scott said. I view the BDS movement as fundamentally anti-Semitic because it is only focused on the world's only Jewish state. It is not focused on countries that commit far more serious human rights violations, discrimination against minority groups, etc. Think Pakistan, Sudan, Saudi Arabia, etc. That's why it's anti-Semitic. And lastly, while a mayor is not in charge of U.S. foreign policy, there is one area that I would love some clarification on from Zoran. He has called for the arrest of Israel's democratically elected leader if he sets foot in New York. And not just him, but anyone who has committed war crimes, which could be 1,000 people in the IDF, depending on how they want to define it. So I'd love some clarification on that.
We're going to go to Mr. Walden, and then we'll come back to Assemblymember Mamdani.
You can go first.
Great. Well, and let me just, we'll give you like 30, 60 seconds to respond. But I also just want to hone in. Assemblymember, you've spoken specifically about previously supporting boycotts. Will you continue to support the boycott of Israel if you are elected mayor? And you can also respond to what Mr. Tilson brought up. You can go for it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'll answer Mr. Tilson's question after I answer yours. And Mr. Tilson, feel free to let me know if I don't answer it sufficiently. I'm someone that what I've said throughout the course of this campaign is that wherever Eric Adams' administration or another administration has taken us out of compliance with international law, I would bring New York City back into that compliance. My focus will always be on that affordability, but that is the consistency around that compliance. And I think ultimately the focus of our mayor should be on the issues of New York City at hand. Now, to the question around Benjamin Netanyahu, I was asked what I would do after he had just been issued an arrest warrant by the International Court of Justice. My answer is the same whether we are speaking about Vladimir Putin or Netanyahu. I think that this should be a city in compliance with international law. And we have seen other countries across the world who are signatories to the ICC state that they would honor that same request, be it Canada or other countries in Europe. And their honoring of it meant that Netanyahu did not travel there. And I think it is important to show leadership in a time when it is sorely missing. And there are some who may say that the United States is not a party to the International Criminal Court. Thank you, Whitney. I knew you were going there. And to that I say that there are times when courage is required. There was a time when it was not legal for same-sex couples to be married in this country. And still, then Mayor Gavin Newsom issued marriage certificates for those very couples in defiance of that legislation. What I am trying to showcase is a belief that international law is something that should be honored, should be respected, and something that we should actually bring our city into compliance with.
And just to be very, very clear, so yes, you will continue to support the boycott of Israel as...
I can't hear you.
I said, yeah, just to be very, very clear. So yes, you will continue to support the boycott of Israel if you are elected mayor.
What I would do is ensure that any of my actions moving... Sorry. Let me know when you... That any of my actions moving forward as the mayor of New York City would not be in violation of any of those international laws and ensure that compliance is at the heart of it. That's all I would focus on.
Mr. Walden.
Okay, let me just start with making sure that you understand this. My view on my relationship with Israel stems from the fact that Israel is a beacon of democracy in a very hard, cruel area of the world where most people have their rights completely quashed, stripped away, if they're even left alive, including all the people who had to live over a terrorist infrastructure that was buried underground to protect them, using them as human shields. That's my perspective. I might be right, I might be wrong, but you should know that. And so I do not support and will never support BDS. And when I am mayor, my perspective with respect to Israel is going to be to visit, and visit often. I tried to do it during the campaign, and I was going to see Gaza as well, but I wasn't able to do it. And I'm going to do what I started doing when we filed the lawsuit against a public school in New York that was teaching completely bigoted curriculum that was anti-Jewish and anti-Zionist, which means we're going to review the curricula of the New York City public schools and get anti-Semitism out of the curriculum when I'm mayor.
Okay, candidates, we're going to move to a new topic, and I want to thank you all for sort of respecting our time cues. We're going to come down the home stretch in this last half hour, and I know some candidates do have other commitments, so we'll say goodbye to you in advance if you have to leave. Rikers Island functions as New York City's de facto second largest psychiatric institution, with over 1 in 5 people there coping with serious mental illness and costs that exceed $500,000 per person annually. What specific steps would you take as mayor right away to deal with the large number of people with mental illness who are currently behind bars? And I wanted to start with you, Mr. Myrie.
Thank you. Thank you for that. One, we need to obey the law. Rikers needs to be closed. And we also are aware that the timeline for that is going to be really difficult to reach. And so I think the first order of business is convening all of the stakeholders, along with, if legally permissible, the remediation manager just appointed by the federal court, to go through the next steps of how we get back on track, how we get back under budget, and ensure that we can do this and follow the law as passed by the city council. We cannot have Rikers be our de facto mental health institution. And so we got to deal with folks before they get to Rikers. And it's really important that we have coordination amongst our city agencies dealing with the 2,000 chronically mentally ill people we have in this city, some responsibility, some accountability, where we can get people into permanent and supportive housing and put them on a real path to recovery.
Okay. Yeah, we'll come down this way. Mr. Lander, we'll come down this way and end with Ms. Adams.
I was proud to co-sponsor the legislation to close Rikers, and as mayor, I will get it done. Rikers must close. On the folks at Rikers who have serious mental illness, Bill de Blasio left Eric Adams a plan to build secure treatment beds that are a partnership between H&H and Department of Corrections. He delayed it, but I've learned that the first 100 are now ready at Bellevue, and Department of Corrections won't open them. So I will get them opened on day one, and then we'll build more of them because people need secure treatment. They should not be on Rikers Island with serious mental illness. And then I've got a really detailed plan. It's actually the first commitment I made in this race to end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness. We do not have to be a city where a couple thousand of our mentally ill neighbors sleep on subway platforms and the stoops of our building. You connect them to housing with supportive services. It's called Housing First. It's working in Houston and Denver and Salt Lake City, solves the issue 70 to 90% of the time. We used it to end street homelessness for veterans here in New York City. We should do the same for people with serious mental illness.
We have to close Rikers Island, we have to follow the law as it is, and we have to recognize that Mayor Adams has made it almost impossible to do so. The law requires its closure by 2027, but today there are actually more New Yorkers incarcerated on Rikers than when that law was first passed. And part of the reason for that is that Rikers Island is the largest mental health facility in New York City. It's the second largest in the entire country. 40% of the incarcerated population has serious mental illness. And it's not just a political failure or a moral failure, it's also a fiscal failure, because it costs the city more than $500,000 to incarcerate someone on Rikers Island. There is a model in New York City, the clubhouse model, which is best epitomized by Fountain House. Fountain House is a peer-led rehabilitative model that serves New Yorkers with serious mental illness. It's been shown to decrease hospitalization rates by about 45%, increase employment rates by more than 50%, and for all of that services for an entire year's worth of work, it costs $4,000. That is 2 days on Rikers Island. So we need to both follow the law and understand that some of the solutions are right here in New York City. We just have to scale them up, so no longer are there 16 of those clubhouses. There are in fact one in every single neighborhood.
After visiting Rikers Island, coming back as city controller, I was the first elected official to say shut down Rikers, and a movement started. Lippman Commission, City Council followed shortly thereafter, and I really thought we were on our way to doing something very positive and strong for people who are most vulnerable. Obviously, the Adams administration didn't get us to where we had to be, and a mayor now with experience is going to have to actually get back to this. But look, it's not just Rikers. I also did the investigations of our homeless shelters, and what I found were broken cribs with children, people who were living with feces and rats, beds that didn't work, food that was expired. And we fought very hard with the de Blasio administration to fix those shelters. There was a night I was in one of the shelters visiting, and I said to myself, by the grace of God, if I had a choice between this shelter, Rikers, or sleeping outside a shul, what would I do? And I actually couldn't answer that question. But here's the thing, for 10 more seconds. This is not a time for training wheels. You gotta understand these city agencies, and I do because I've audited them for 8 years. You have to understand what we can do and what we can't do, and not everything is gonna happen with a budget that's under attack by Trump. So we have to plan, and we have to build a government that speaks to capacity with our homeless service agencies and relevant agencies, and that's what I want to do as mayor.
I co-chaired Central Synagogue's criminal justice reform activism group for a number of years with some of my friends in the room here, and we pushed for closing Rikers. Unfortunately, what the City Council passed is an enormous mess. It was $8 billion, now up to $16 billion, four of the most expensive buildings ever built in New York City with your tax dollars, and it only builds 4,000 beds. That's $4 million a bed, and there's 7,500 people at Rikers. If you want to double crime overnight in this city, release 3,500 people from Rikers. We need more long-term psychiatric facilities, more secure treatment beds, et cetera. But I don't think we will ever be at the point of being able to fully close Rikers. If we shrink it and from, say, 8 facilities down to 3, rebuild those 3 so that they are modern and safe for both the inmates and the correctional officers in there. And I confidently predict we will have 5 primary jails in New York City, the 4 new ones under construction, and smaller, safer Rikers.
Mr. Walden.
The question was about what I was going to do on day one about severely mentally ill people on the street. There are roughly 2,000 of them between the street and Rikers Island. And so the question was about Rikers Island with respect to the mentally ill. And I want you to understand this. This issue is very personal to me. My sister was mentally ill for most of her adult life, and she ended up in jail where she didn't belong. And from there, after she left, she had a period of lucidity, and then because the mental health system failed her, she ultimately ended up dead. It's happening in our city every day, and what do people do? They pass the buck, they blame, they say, well, we have to follow the law, we have to do this. No, you have to get these people out of Rikers, period. So my plan starts before I'm elected, right? During the interregnum period, I'm going to strike contracts with hospitals outside the city of New York because all of them were closed here. We can't get bed space online. And we're going to get those people out of Rikers Island and get them in long-term treatment that they need, because that's the humane thing to do and that's the right thing to do. Yes, it will be expensive. New York City next year, our budget will be $118 billion. Los Angeles is less than $18 billion. Can you believe that? That's the level of waste in our city. I'm going to find the money to get it done, and we need to pass the law or set up a city-based law that makes it easier to deal with mentally ill people on the street or in Rikers Island, and I'm going to get it done as mayor.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Adams.
Yes, thank you. As one who oversaw the hearing to close Rikers Island and one whose mother was a correction officer on Rikers Island for almost 20 years, I can tell you that my mother wanted that place closed. So Rikers Island must close. The question then becomes, with a population of almost half belonging in needing a mental health care, what do we do with that? We've had a mayor that has prohibited, quite frankly, the closure of Rikers Island by continuing to increase the numbers, and I think it's on purpose, to increase the numbers. Low-level offenses, people are committing suicide that have been accused of low-level offenses that haven't even had their day in court. That's an abomination. But as far as the mental health crisis on Rikers is concerned, I agree. We must first move those in mental health crisis that never belonged there in the first place. We have to move them out of Rikers Island. There was a process to do this, and yes, we do have places for them. We've got supportive places for them. We've got NYCHA reparations that we need to do that I have already secured in the budget when the City of Yes was passed. So those things can be done. I am already doing the work, currently already working through this process. The only one here in this race that is already currently working towards doing just that. We must close Rikers Island. We must.
Okay, candidates, I want to move to another topic, and I'm going to ask you for a show of hands because we're just trying to move through some of these. While most of the tens of thousands of students who attend yeshivas in New York are getting a good education, a significant subset, numbering in the thousands, especially boys and young men, are getting little or no so-called secular education beyond middle school in critical subjects, including math, science, history, and English. This question is about that often neglected subset of students, not yeshiva students overall, not your overall goals for the system. But by a show of hands, do you believe that regardless of where a child goes to school, they should receive a sound basic education, including science, math, English, and social studies? Okay? Just checking. And here's the real question, though, also by a show of hands. If elected, are you willing to support the removal of public funding, including federal pass-through dollars, security funding, child care vouchers, to schools that are found to be out of compliance with state education standards? Yeah, very different, right? So let me ask those who did not raise their hands, and I guess I'd start with you, Ms. Adams, and then Mr. Myrie. Why not stand up and actually enact what has been an issue that's been kicking around for over a decade now?
You know, for me, as one who was the education chairperson of my community board before I ever became an elected official, Education has always been a priority of mine. I have an issue whenever it comes to removing education or items of education away from our precious children. They are our future. And in my mind and estimation, we need to be resourcing them, not taking resources from the children. Ultimately, it is going to be the children, the population that we need to grow and educate that will suffer as through any kind of removal of any sources and resources to our children. There has to be a way that the local government can work with the state government to work through this and not have the children suffer in between.
Well, Mr. Myra, you know, when it comes to this issue, to a certain extent, it's not necessarily a resource issue, right? Some of the school leaders just don't want to do it.
So I think when it comes to removing public funds for any school, I think we have to be really careful. And I say that as someone that represents a number of yeshivas, someone that has worked on this issue on the state level. You know, we have schools in our public school system that have not done everything that we've needed them to do. And our first instinct has not been to remove public school funding. It has been to work to see how we can improve. And I think that our relationship with these schools should be one of partnership and how we get to the best result and not one of trying to remove funds as a first resort.
Okay. And who else? Yeah, Mr. Mr. Mamdani.
I think that our focus has to be on compliance, not on punishment. And the idea of the first instinct being stripping funding. Also, one of the examples you provided was stripping funding for security. Now, if a school is out of compliance on education standards, why should the safety of those students then suffer as a result of that? I think the compliance has to be the first focus, but the stripping of funding to me is something that is a step too far when what our focus should be is elsewhere.
Okay. And Mr. Stringer, it's largely a leverage question to a certain extent, right? I mean, isn't that what this is about?
Well, let me I happen to agree strongly with Speaker Adams and Senator Myrie. I think they put it very succinctly and where it's at. But leverage doesn't start by divestment. Leverage starts by being able to build relationships within the system, which we really haven't done, to start creating a trust between City Hall, the yeshivas. There's a lot of yeshivas I've been part of and visited that are doing great education work, and there's obviously other schools that are more problematic. But I don't think we automatically start with the stick. I think there's a carrot-stick approach that we should use.
Okay.
Errol, you didn't propose starting with the stick in the question, did you? I missed that part of the question.
In fact, I mean, really, the premise of the question is, after 10 years of cooperation, conversation, delay, is it time to actually try and resolve the issue rather than continue talking? Mr. Tilson.
Sure. I was one of the founders of Teach for America 36 years ago, been on the board of KIPP charter schools for more than 20 years here in the city. Charter schools are about 15% of New York City public schools, and we are rigorously evaluated, and we can be put on probation or shut down if we don't demonstrate that we are providing delivering on our objectives for kids. I think that same standard should be applied to all of our public schools and all the private schools in this state. It's not a question of coercing anyone by taking some of their funding away. It's really a relatively small number of yeshivas that do not make any attempt whatsoever to provide any kind of basic education. But I think faced with probation and then the prospect of being shut down, Jews are very good at educating young people, if you haven't noticed, all around the world. It's sort of shocking to me that there's this little element of it that is at the opposite extreme.
Mr. Walden.
I don't want to repeat what other people said. I'm a carrot and sticks guy. I do agree that with any educational institution, even with a public school, if it's consistently failing kids, something needs to be done that is akin to a stick. I wouldn't start out there by any stretch of the imagination. I would look at each school individually and make sure that we did everything in our power to use the carrots that we have rather than going to the sticks.
Oh, yeah. I think, just for the record, the YAFED, the organization, one of the co-sponsors of tonight's events, I think we're up on something like the 10th anniversary of their initial lawsuit that tried to bring this to public attention.
Thank you all. We're going to move on to one last substantive topic and then hopefully get in one more quick lightning round and wrap this up so you can all get on to what I imagine is your next event tonight, because none of you are probably done this early. But we know from other forums and from your questionnaires that folks here are committed to ensuring trans, non-binary, intersex New Yorkers have access to gender-affirming and culturally competent health care. Earlier this year, New York Presbyterian removed transgender youth care from their website, and NYU Langone canceled gender transition treatment appointments for young people in response to federal threats. So one of the questions from our partners at Keshet, which is the Jewish LGBTQ organization, we can do this maybe by a show of hands to start, and if there's a disagreement, we can parse it. Will you commit to using all available levers of the city's government to ensure that our city's hospitals, public and private, comply with New York State's non-discrimination laws and continue to provide gender-affirming care? By a show of hands. All 7 of you?
Yes, but can I do more than that?
Yes, we can take, if folks want to quickly offer 30 seconds of thoughts, we have a little bit of time.
30 seconds. An activist from the trans community showed up at my launch and spoke to me. I have a trans policy coming out tomorrow, and what's happening to the trans policy in our world, and this is reflected in part with what's happening in the city, is an abomination. We need to protect trans people. We need to protect their rights to health care. We need to do the same thing with respect to the trans community that we would do to any minor, which is require parental consent, but when the parents make a decision with the child, honor that in our public hospitals and in every place that gets our funding. We should not have two standards, right? These are very, very difficult decisions, and I don't know how many of you have actually met with trans people to understand how difficult their choices are and how much bias there is against them. But when I'm mayor, I'm going to make sure to shine a light on this issue to make sure that trans people get the same protection and safety and health care and jobs and housing that everyone else deserves.
Thank you. We're going to I'll go to Speaker Adams and then come to you, Mr. Tilson, and if others want to,
Yes,
Senator Myrie, I see you.
Thank you so much. What a critical question in these critical times. The City Council has led on protection for our LGBTQIA plus communities across. We recently passed legislation to prohibit health and hospitals or any other healthcare facility from denying health care to any LGBTQIA trans individual. We need to protect the rights of anybody that wants to live in our society, in our world, not take those rights away. We need to uplift the civil rights of all people that just want to live and be who they are. Once again, the City Council has led on this. As mayor, I will continue that leadership on to the other side of City Hall.
Senator.
Yeah, I just want to say, of course, absolutely, we will do that. But I also want to make the point that capitulation to Trump never works. It never works. And it has to be a part of the ethos of this city that we are going to stand up to this bully. We have seen it in other examples, even in the legal industry, with law firms that capitulated and law firms that stood up and sued. And the ones that stood up and sued prevailed in court. And that is what I think we have to approach all of these subjects with, the courage of New York City to stand up and push back.
Just as a proof point to what the senator says, I mean, our current mayor is running an experiment in how to capitulate in the most humiliating way you possibly could have imagined, and it is not doing anything to help New York City. You've heard a couple of times on the stage about the $80 million that Musk and Trump stole. I uncovered it. I forced the mayor into court. We're going to get that money back. It belongs to you and not to Elon Musk. I have laid out a proposal for establishing an independent health authority to use city, state, and private dollars only to pay for abortion, contraception, reproductive care, and gender-affirming care. H&H budget's about $4 billion. About $1 billion of that is federal Medicaid funding. Less than $100 million goes for these other uses. We should put that in an independent authority so we can keep providing the reproductive and gender-affirming care, keep it walled off from the federal funds so that it's at less risk from Trump.
When NYU Langone announced that they were going to capitulate to Donald Trump's illegal executive order, I attended a rally with a number of trans New Yorkers. And at that rally, what I shared with some was that while NYU Langone may think that their biggest donor is either Ken Langone himself or the federal government, in fact, the city of New York is one of their largest donors by ensuring they don't pay a single dollar in property taxes. Now, if you are an institution that wants to violate the equal rights and the law of the city and the state, then we should interrogate every single way that we provide you with that subsidy to allow you to violate those laws. Because it's critical that we understand that this authoritarianism is not just coming from DC, it's also being echoed by institutions right here in New York City. And that's why I'm proud to say that my administration will put $65 million to ensuring that we can continue to provide that gender-affirming care for New Yorkers who need it.
If I can just be uplifting with this question, because we're under such attack, but I got to tell you, the people in this room, many of you I've represented for a very long time, have always led on these issues. I totally remember when I was one of 5 people who supported the marriage equality bill in Albany with Deborah Glick, who endorsed my candidacy, how revolutionary it was not that long ago, and look how far we've come. And when my wife and I were getting married, we didn't get married in New York, we had to get married in Connecticut because we wanted social support for our brothers and sisters and people in the community. But now the next fight is to make sure that trans New Yorkers have the same rights as everybody else, and we need to do a funding mechanism and an education system so that we can give people the knowledge to make smart choices for their lives, and then when they make that choice, we have to do what we New Yorkers have always done. We have to have their back, we have to fight back, and we have to have a mayor who understands it.
I have a trans cousin here in New York City, and I think the way Republicans have weaponized this issue and demonized the trans community is abhorrent. That said, I think the response is not to go too far the other way and hand people like Trump the White House and Republicans Congress. Specifically, when we're talking about gender-affirming care for people under, young people under age 18, we need to be very, very careful. I don't think any hospital should be barred from it, but I don't think every hospital should be doing it, particularly when it comes to drugs that are create permanent and irreversible changes in young people's bodies. I think they should be black box labeled. And ultimately, it should be the parents and the young person's decision, but only very specialized medical professionals should be doing anything in this area.
So we have 2 minutes left. We're going to go to one very quick lightning round question to give you all a chance to end on an uplifting note, and then we'll close this out. So my question almost...
You're asking our favorite mustard or something?
Exactly.
Is that what you're doing now?
We're all going to Katz's after this. We're going to start down, we'll start maybe on this end with Mr. Walden, if that's okay.
Not another deli question.
It's not. Which Jewish New Yorker, past or present, real or fictional, inspires you most?
Yeah. I'm going to have to give the same answer. All right, let me just tell this story. Is it really quick? How long do I have? All right.
10 seconds.
So when I left my house, I slept on a floor for a year, and there was a woman who I said before saved my life, and her name is Sarah Silver, and she literally came back from Yale and helped me fill out all of my college applications and got my life back on the right track. I was literally flipping burgers at McDonald's, and Sarah was the person, and she's also the person that introduced me to Judaism to begin with. So she's my favorite Jew in the entire universe, and that's the story.
Well, I don't know if inspire is the right word for a technocrat like Mike Bloomberg, but I thought he was one of the greatest mayor in New York City in my lifetime, and he inspired me to get involved politically. Particularly, he was very strong in helping KIPP and other charter schools expand, and I'm running in his lane.
The woman who inspired me to get involved in a lifetime of political activism was my cousin, Bella Abzug, who I worked for. And I knew you were going to love that because it's true.
It's just not fair to have to go after that. I was going to say she was my cousin. But anyway, he steals it from me again. Another forum, another... For me, it has to be Bernie Sanders. He He is the person who gave me the language of how I describe my politics. He's been an inspiration for me for a long time, and we often think about him purely as a senator, but I think also his time as the mayor of Burlington is one that has shown me what's possible to be a progressive running a city and delivering that dignity.
My son Marek is named after Marek Edelman, one of the leaders of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. My daughter Rosa is named after Rose Schneiderman, an amazing Jewish labor activist in New York. And I feel so lucky to have raised these two Jewish kids in this city. They study Yiddish. Rosa did an internship at the Lower East Side Tenement Museum. What I am inspired to do is to make for every kid of New York City what my two beautiful Jewish kids have had. That's the reason I'm running for mayor, so I'm gonna go with Marek and Rosa.
My middle school math teacher, Mr. Habib, may he rest in peace, was the person that stood up in front of a class of all black children and said, I'm going to scrap the curriculum and prepare you to take the specialized high school exam. Without Mr. Habib, I would not have gotten into Brooklyn Tech. I would not be sitting at this table today, so I'm most grateful and inspired for him.
Well, I have two, and they're both women. The notorious RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. For a whole lot of reasons, and the most is that she really, really inspired me year after year after year, watching her dominance and her brilliance. And the second one, some of you may laugh, but I have to throw my humor out here also. Judge Judy Scheinlin, what?
Okay,
Judge Judy.
Good. Okay, thank you very much, candidates. I'm going to, as Kiana from the Planning Committee comes forward to dismiss us, I want to thank all of the candidates for another great forum. I must make a small plug that, as you know, all of the candidates who qualified for matching funds were invited. And all of them will, in fact, be on New York 1 on Thursday, except for Mr. Walden, because he's not in the Democratic primary. We'll deal with him later. But we'll see all of the others. See all of the others, and I hope you'll all tune in.
That sounded ominous.
Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm just going to say one minute worth of words. In particular, thank you so much to our moderators, Amy Spitalnik and Errol Lewis, who really wove beautifully our flow from questions lighthearted and very deep beautifully. Thank you to all of the candidates who joined us tonight. I want to acknowledge and thank the incredible work from our planning committee, including Congregation Beth Elohim, the New York Jewish Agenda, and the Marlene Meyerson JCC of Manhattan. Thank you all for making this possible. I said Congregation Beth Elohim. I said them.
And join the New York Jewish Agenda, yes? You can sign up tonight.
And we also had many, many co-sponsors, so I just want to read them quickly. Adama New York, A More Perfect Union, the Jewish Partnership for Democracy, Anshe Hesed, Avodah, Ben the Ark New York, East End Temple, Highest New York, the Interfaith Assembly on Homelessness and Housing, J Street NYC, JCC Harlem, Jewish Climate Action Network New York, Kehilat Harlem, Keshet, Kolot Chayenu, Lab Shul, National Council of Jewish Women New York, Park Slope Jewish Center, RAC New York, Romemu Brooklyn, SAJ, Judaism that stands for all, the Synagogue Coalition on the Refugee and Immigration Crisis, Trua, the Rabbinic Call for Human Rights, Worker Circle, and Yafed. Thank you all. Many of them helped submit and shape our questions. And I just want to remind folks, it's okay that people are leaving, but the deadline for registration for early voting is this week, June 14th. We have voter registration forms in the back if you need them. Early voting starts next weekend, Saturday, June 14th through Sunday, June 22nd. And our primary election will be on June 24th. Thank you all. Please stay involved.
Can I